Amos Oz is not just one of the most important writers in Israel. He's definitely one of the most important writers working, living in the world today. This is not just a local thing, this is a global phenomenon. Not only were his books translated into every conceivable language, but they have been not only have they been very successful, but they are really extremely important, moving, and deep works of art. I remind you just of some of the latest ones, Sipor על אהבה וחושך, A Tale of Love and Darkness, and the book he wrote with his daughter, Jews and Words, and also his latest novel, Judas. I also remind you that he's one of the most important public intellectuals in Israel, that he's been for many years writing about social, cultural, and political issues wherever it counts and wherever these things matter. I also remind you that unlike sort of in correction of the common myth, it was not Yeshayahu Leibovich who wrote right away that we have a problem with the occupied territories. It was in fact Amos Oz. It's a pleasure, as I said, an honor to have him with us. The formal title of his talk is Where Do My Stories Come From? But being who he is, he will talk about whatever he pleases.
Thank you, Aviad, for this heartwarming introduction. I'd be comfortable to sit here for the rest of this afternoon just listening to you introducing me. Shalom and good afternoon to all of you. Where my stories come from, the short answer is I don't know. The longer answer I will try to share with you in the next 50 or 60 minutes and then answer some questions, and if I cannot answer them, I will join them. For many years, when I lived in Kibbutz Hulda, when I lived in Arad in the Negev desert, and now recently that my family and I have moved to Tel Aviv, I have the habit of waking long before sunrise, 4 o'clock in the morning, and start my day by taking a walk in the empty city, or before that in the empty desert, or before that in the empty fields of the kibbutz. 4 o'clock in the morning is a very special hour, and I'm sure very few of you are really familiar with it. It's a time of the day, or to be precise, time of the night, which helps you knock many, many things back into proportion. If the night before I heard on television or on the radio that this or that politician used terms such as forever, never, for the rest of eternity, 4 o'clock in the morning I can hear the stars or the blowing wind or even the treetops laughing at him. Things go back into proportion. Ever, eternity, never. Here in the Middle East, if you were my age, you would know that the word never here in the Middle East, or forever, means something between 6 months and 30 years, give or take. Many other things which are less important, many other things which have to do with the maintenance of life. I don't know how it is with you, but with me it feels that the maintenance of life takes more time than life itself. But at 4 o'clock in the morning there is no maintenance of life. There are some street cats. There are nocturnal ravens shouting, human voices almost, in the treetops in the city park. There are some lights which people leave on in their bathrooms, maybe because of the children, maybe because they think they can repel death by leaving the light on. Some days, when I'm very lucky, not every day, some days, I get to say good morning to the newspaper delivery man who is limping. And occasionally, there is a light in some living room. And I look in, and if the curtains are open, I see a woman. It's not what you think. I'm not a peeping Tom and the woman is decently dressed. But I see a woman and I ask myself, what on earth is she doing all alone in her living room, 4 o'clock in the morning, standing by the window, looking at the darkness? I don't have the answer, but sometimes I have a story. Then I go back to my home, I fix myself a cup of coffee, and before 5 every morning, including today, every morning before 5, I sit myself by my desk and I start asking myself, what if I were him? What if I were her? What if I were them? What would I think? What would I wish? What would I be very, very ashamed of and would like nobody to ever know about me? What would I be proud of and would like the whole world to know about me? How would I dress? What would I eat? What would I hope for? The storytelling is not a business of ideas. Healing ideas or painful ideas or traumatic ideas. It's not even a business of plots. It's a business of imagining the other, putting yourself inside the shoes of other people, sometimes even under the skin of other people, men and women. And this is what I do for the first 4 hours of every day, from 5 to 9 or so. Telephones are disconnected, newspaper has to wait, the radio is shut, the rest of the family is doing whatever they are doing, sleeping mostly. There is quiet. I see the sunrise in my window, the early morning light, sometimes much more beautiful than the evening twilight, and I imagine other people. And I write, and I erase, and I rewrite. So the driving force for this end, I raise my hand because I write by hand with a pen. I know people are always curious to know, is it a computer, or is it a pen, what kind of pen? Well, I write by hand because I am a reactionary, or maybe because I'm addicted to the sensual contact between fingers, pen, and paper. Maybe. However, the driving force is curiosity. The eagerness to know in what ways other people, behind their facades, behind their gestures, behind their words, to what extent are they actually very much like myself? And to what extent are they totally different than me or different than each other? Curiosity. Now, all of you know, I'm sure you know, it's our daily bread, that curiosity is a prime condition for any intellectual work. It's a precondition. No curiosity, no intellectual creativity. But I wish to add that, at least in my view, curiosity is also a moral virtue. I found that curious people are sometimes better human beings, at least slightly better human beings, than people who are not curious. Better spouses, better parents, better neighbors, better partners, because they put themselves sometimes under the skin of others, because they ask themselves from time to time the question, what if I were here, or what if I were him? Not in order to erase your own self and your own wishes and your own beliefs and cancel yourself for the other. Not in the sake of Jesus' famous suggestion of turning the other cheek to your enemy. No. Just the need to know. What would I say, do, want, feel if I were here or him? I even think that curious people are slightly better drivers on the road than people who are not curious, for the simple reason that the curious driver asks herself from time to time what this idiot might do next. What would I do if I were in a reckless moment or very tired or slightly tipsy? I would even say that, and I know this firsthand, I would even say that curious people are better lovers than people who are not curious. And I know you would like me to elaborate now on this aspect of curiosity, but the time of the day is a little too early for a detailed seminary on curiosity and eroticism. But yes, curiosity makes us broader and more open. And it is curiosity that drives me ahead of anything else into putting myself in the place of others when I write. This began very early in my life, if I may insert a personal story here. The enlarged curiosity, hyper curiosity. I was an only child. My parents used to meet their friends once in a few weeks in one of the Jerusalem cafes. Home was much too small to host friends. So they would meet in a cafe. And they promised me that if I kept quiet, not interrupt their conversation with their friends, I'll get ice cream in the end. And ice cream was a huge commodity in Jerusalem 70 years ago. Huge commodity. Very few children were allowed ice cream, not because it was so expensive, but because the common idea was that ice cream is bad for your throat, and God knows it might also be full of microbes. So this was a big promise, ice cream. But they conducted their debates, deliberations with their friends for 77 hours non-stop. And I was on the verge of dying of boredom because I could not follow their conversations. In order not to die of boredom, I began spying after other guests in the cafe. People by the next table. 2 men and a woman. What are they to each other? Are they brothers-in-law? Are they competitors? Are they cousins, the whole 3 of them? I spied. I tried to overhear snatches of their conversation and invent the rest. I followed the body language. I paid attention to who orders what and who pays the bill in the end. I looked at the clothes. I scrutinized the shoes. Shoes always tell me a story. Beware of me, those who sit in front of me. I can see your shoes, and I know 1 or 2 things about every one of you. So I became a little spy because of the temptation of ice cream and the fear of dying of boredom. I never stopped to do that, even now that I'm an old man. When I have to sit and wait, I hate the term kill time. I don't think you can kill time. Time kills me, I don't kill time. But when I have to wait at the dentist's waiting room, or in a clinic, or in a railway station, or in an airport, I don't read the tabloids. They keep repeating themselves. I don't watch the silent screens on the wall. I look at strangers. I watch their body language. Who wears what? I overhear snatches of conversations and I invent or imagine the rest. Wonderful pastime. Recommended to everyone, not just to writers. More exciting than the tabloids, plus you get ice cream in the end. So yes, I look at people and I watch, and I think curiosity is also the driving force behind reading fine literature. We all read for our living. We read for research. We read to broaden our horizons. We read because we want to write a thesis. We read because we work on our degree. But reading for fun, reading stories, reading novels, reading poetry, reading about the lives of others, essentially curiosity about other people. And we get very excited when we find that in some ways other people are exactly like ourselves. Exactly. And in other ways, they are so very different. Many years ago, I read a short story. Sorry, I have not written it. I read it. It was an English short story. I don't remember who wrote it. I don't remember where I read it. I don't remember anything at all about the story. Apparently, it wasn't a great story. But I'll never forget the title. The title of that story was "All Our Secrets Are the Same." Bugs my mind, because on a certain level it's true. If you dig a little bit, you will find that at least many of our secrets are very similar to each other. We need to be loved, and we don't get as much love as we think we deserve, or as much we want. We need to be appreciated, and we are not always appreciated. We want to be forgiven, we are not always forgiven. Yes, all our secrets are the same. But if you dig deeper, you will find that every single human being has his or her labyrinth of fantasies and nightmares and wishful thinking and forbidden gardens, and everyone lives on a different planet. And yet again, if you dig still deeper, in a deeper layer, you will once again find that all our secrets are almost the same. But then again, if you dig deeper, and there is no bottom, well, I have not reached the bottom. In some ways, all our secrets are the same. In some other ways, they are not. I read a novel, and sometimes I'm stunned because a paragraph, a sentence, a description, a gesture, a physical gesture, makes me hold my breath and say, this is about me. How the hell could this writer, how could she or he know this very intimate, very private detail about myself, about my life, about my fantasy life? This is me. But then again, I'm no less thrilled when I read a description, a paragraph, in a novel, in a story, and I say to myself, oh no, this could not be me. Not even if they offered me $1 million. Not me. Not me, not in a million years. Not me, under no circumstances. Not even under torture. This is not me. And there is a very similar excitement, or at least parallel excitement, in this discovery. Here I am, it's me, it's a mirror. And here is the not me, the someone whom I'll never be, the things I'll never do. These are among the most thrilling fascinations of a reader. Now I'm going to suggest, and I know some of you are about to jump at me, but hold your breath for a moment, hold your horses. I'm going to suggest that almost every great literature, novel, short story, almost every great work of literature is provincial. Moreover, the more provincial it is, the better chances it stands to become universal. I say universal, not international. Please never confuse a universal story with an international story. A universal story is a story which reveals to us that on a certain level our secrets are, and on another level our secrets are not the same. Such stories are universal. International is different. International novels and stories, they take place in international hotels and airports, and people read them buy them in international hotels and airports, and they read them in international hotels and airports, and then they leave them on a bench in an international hotel or airport. So just the opposite. Provincial, yes. What about big city literature? What about urban literature? Even an urban literature is provincial, because a novel hardly ever tell you the story of a big city. It really tells you the story of a neighborhood, a suburb, an outskirt, a street, a universe which extends from the pharmacy at the left corner of the lane to the grocery store at the right hand of the lane, and the public garden across, and maybe the stairwell and a few doors in a condominium, in a block of flats. Even this is a micro world. It is strange, isn't it? My own favorite writers, they all write about worlds which are far, far away from where I grew up. Light years away. Chekhov. God-forsaken little small towns in the Russian province. Always the city of N or the city of M, period. Who had ever set foot in those places? Who could set foot in them? They no longer exist. If you buy a ticket today and try to go to those places, you will not find them. They were erased by revolutions and civil wars and time and technology and whatever. And yet you read a short story by Chekhov and you are there. You know the gossip. You know the politics. You know the smells. You know the cuisine. You know the secrets. You know the power struggles. You know the class differences. You know the relations between men and women, including some of the relations which even the townspeople do not know, and you, the reader, you know them. You are from there. And the same, let's say, the deep south in William Faulkner's novels and stories, the deep south of the United States. Yes, I have traveled once to Oxford, Mississippi, in the footsteps of William Faulkner. And I looked around the city, the smaller cities around the countryside. You know, I had the feeling that I'm watching a so-so reproduction of a painting of which I've seen the original a long time ago. The reproduction was so-so. Think of Agnon's Buchach in Galicia. Well, people still go there, but it no longer exists. No Jews, no synagogues, no cantor, no singings, no kosher slaughterer. It's no longer there. And yet you go deep into a novel by Agnon and you are there. You are there in an intimate and very, very detailed way. One of the greatest 20th century novels in my views is called The Leopard, Il Gatto Pardo, by an Italian nobleman from Sicily, Lampedusa. It's the only book he wrote in his life, and he never lived to see it published because it was turned down by every major publishing house in Italy. It's a wonderful novel. It takes place in a remote corner of sun-scorched Sicily, a place called Donna Fugata. There is an aristocratic family house and a village. You read The Leopard, Il Gatto Pardo, it's called in the original. It's not exactly a leopard, it's a more rare and almost mythological species of a leopard, Il Gatto Pardo. And you know all about those people. You go into the most intimate layers of their inner lives. In a way, you know about them even more than they themselves know about themselves. You get to understand them better than they understand themselves. And then, yes, of course, you know the gossip of the small town, who is doing what with whom. And you see the upcoming social forces and the declining social forces, and the landscape and the thistles and the summer fires and the heat and the sweat and the long starry nights. We really get to know more about Macondo in 100 years with a historical depth and family myths and family secrets and taboos. We get to know more about Macondo than we know about the place where we ourselves grew up. So yes, very often the more provincial, the more universal. Not always. It's not a formula. But it works. And it works in an amazing way. I get sometimes a letter from a reader, a female reader in Seoul, Korea. She read one of my novels in a Korean translation. She writes to me that she is in her early 30s, which means she was not even born when that novel was written. That novel is located in a Jerusalem which no longer exists. It's gone. You will not find it. And she reads this novel and she writes to me, this novel is about me. You are telling my story. Well, I shiver. It's a miracle. I'm not sure this lady could locate Jerusalem on the map. She certainly knows very little about the historical, political, archaeological, theological, emotional background of Jerusalem, of the family I described. I doubt it, but who cares? She says it's about me, and she takes the trouble to write me a letter, not an email, a letter with a stamp, addressed to my university department in Beersheba, when I still taught there. This is it. This is the magic, the alchemy. I know this is very, very sentimental. You don't need a winter night and a chair and a standing lamp in order to read a novel. I have read novels in sweaty buses and in sand dunes in reserve service in the army. You can read anywhere. You can read in noisy cafes, you can read on the beach, you can read everywhere. But for my own sentimental reasons, this is where I place my ideal reader. Now, a big question. This picture, wintry night, wind, rain, closed shutters, light, chair, reader. How is this still possible now in the second decade of the 21st century? 120 years ago, I understand it perfectly well. What else would a person do on a wintry night? You won't go out. Where will you go? You won't turn on the television or any other electronic gadget. They had not existed. Outside there was nothing. Muddy roads, cities and villages alike. In the cities, some street lamp moving in the wind, and a drunk night watchman with a thick stick walking around. Where would you go? So people sat home and read. But today, the city is calling you. There are cafes and restaurants and cinemas and operas and theaters and nightclubs. Endless attractions. And even if you prefer to stay at home, you have the whole switchboard at your service. You have the telephone, and you have the television, and you have the disc player, and you have the computer with all its endless abundance of options. Why would anyone still sit in a chair and read a book when life had become so full of nightly temptations, apparently more immediate, more direct, more sensual than reading a book? And indeed, for more than 100 years, we have been hearing doomsday predictions about the impending death of the novel or the short story of the written literature. When they first lit the theater 140 years ago, 130 years ago, with gas lamps, and the theater began playing in the evening, the prophets of doom said, this is the end of literature, no one will read. People will come to the theater because at the theater you watch, you listen, you don't have to make the effort and read. Then they invented the film, the screens, first the silent films, and then the talking films, and then the color films, and people said, now the theater and literature will die. And then came television, and the prophets said, Now the cinema and the theater and the literature will die. And then came the computer, and the people still read. And in fact, they read in great numbers. You will be surprised, perhaps some of you may be surprised if I told you that Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, one of the greatest novels ever written, and one of the most commercially successful novels ever written, sold in Russia in the first year of its publication, which was, if I'm not mistaken, 1861. It sold the huge number of 35,000 copies. Much less than a new novel by David Grossman or Chaim Be'er or Meir Shalev would sell today in Little Israel. Well, the reason is obvious. Many, many millions in Russia couldn't read. Nobody taught them how to read. Men never read novels. That was women's business, still is to some extent. Men had better business. They even went out sometimes in the evening, which is when the lady stayed home and read it. Only those ladies read who had a maid to look after the kids, or a nanny to look after the kids, and a maid to look after the dishes, and a cook to look after the kitchen, and a cleaning lady to look after whatever. Those ladies, they read Anna Karenina. By the tens of thousands, they were the readers. But seriously, how is it possible that people still read when, very obviously, of all the many arts, literature is the least sensual one? It has the least to offer, less to offer than any other art to our senses. The theater speaks to our eyes and to our ears. The cinema speaks to our eyes and our ears. The concert hall offers us a vocal elation. The exhibition, painting exhibition, sculpture exhibition, is sometimes a feast to the eye. What is there in a book? I mean, if you opened a book and presented it to an alien from the planet Mars, and asked this alien, what do you see in front of you? He will simply say, I see long lines of dead ants in a fields of snow. This is it. Dead ants in fields of snow, field after field after field, page after page after page. The rest is your creation, the reader's creation. In no other art, the reader is invited to take such an active part in the creation as in literature. And this may be the secret of the pleasure. You see, I say the following in brackets. I never liked the term, the role of literature.
The what?
The role of literature. It has a flavor of regimes and periods and places which I don't like. I heard too much about the role of literature when I was a schoolboy. I don't like it at all. Instead of the role of literature, of the duty of literature, or the mission of literature, or the riches of literature, I would like to say the gift of literature, the pleasures of literature. Because it's an invitation for the reader to be a co-author or a co-producer. In every work of literature, the writer offers you just musical notes, and you, the reader, you are the performing artist. You play the music. Now there can be all kinds of combinations. There can be wonderful, divine musical notes performed by a mediocre violinist or pianist, or vice versa. There could be a wonderful piece of music and a wonderful performer and no chemistry between the two. You know, it is a strange business. If I write in my book the words sunset, it's up to you, my readers, to throw into the game, to throw into the arena your own sunsets. Otherwise, nothing will happen, nothing at all. If I use the words unrequited love, disappointed love, you will have to bring in your own disappointed loves, or else nothing will happen. If I say blue, you will have to paint the sky in blue. And if I'm more specific and I write which kind or which shade of blue, you will have to bring it from your own memory, experience, sensitivity, creativity. You know, this is like love. This is like making love. It takes two. It's not for nothing that just like making love, reading and writing literature is the most intimate of all arts. You can hear music in a concert hall in the company of others, of hundreds or thousands of others, and enjoy it. You can watch an exhibition with others and enjoy it. Theater, cinema. Reading is essentially a performance of two, the reader and the writer, very intimate, very private. And just as it is in lovemaking, so it is in reading. The more you bring with you, the more you get out of it. The more you give, the more you take. Not because it is a give and take bargain. No. Just like lovemaking, the giving is the taking. A reader who brings into the game a richer inner world, a broader spectrum of memoirs and experiences and fantasies and wishful thinkings and dreads and nightmares, the more she or he will get from the partner, from the text, provided there is chemistry. Sometimes the reader is wonderful, very rich, very experienced, very full of blessings, and so is the book. But there is no chemistry. Why? Who knows? Never be embarrassed about, and I'm sure it happened to anyone, many of you, never be embarrassed when everybody tells you this book is a masterpiece, this book is a must, you must read it, and you try and try and try, and after 20 or 30 pages you just say, I'm sorry. And other people say there must be something wrong with you. You must be wrong in the head. The whole world is celebrating it. Well, you are not, because there is no chemistry between you personally and this book personally. And it takes two for a dance. And you cannot clap with one hand, as the Arabic proverb says. And again, just like making love, reading is the kind of artistic experience which demands 100% of your attention. You cannot allow yourself to be elsewhere part of the time. You can doze a little bit in the cinema or watching television, and then you'll catch up somehow. You may even whisper, it's not recommended, but you may even whisper with a friend while listening to music. Some people conduct very good conversations in the restaurant with beautiful music in the background. They half hear it. Some people walk along the exhibits in an art exhibition and talk to a friend, to a partner. They watch the art and they conduct a conversation about the art, about other things, about life. You cannot do that when you read a book. Either you are 100% there, or else don't read the book. Just like in love. Either you are 100% where you are, or don't even be there to start with. So yes, I know it's a sexy presentation. It's a sexy temptation, reading compared to lovemaking. But it is, in many respects, mostly because of the very active involvement of both parties. You know, 1,000,000 years ago or so, a young woman, took off all her clothes for me. She lied on the bed on her back. She closed her eyes and she said, surprise me. How on earth could I surprise her? Perhaps a bucket of cold water? How else could I surprise her? She is, I don't even remember her name, I'm ashamed to say, but I do remember her as a model of the bed reader who wants to sit back and be enjoyed, be pleasured. No. The more you bring into the reading, the more you get out of it. If the partnership is right, if there is chemistry. And this is why literature is still around and people still read. Because that particular sweetness of being an active part of creation in every way, of investing so much of yourself into the story, so much of your own background, experience, family story, memory, desire to discover that all our secrets are the same and desire to discover that they are not. Desire to find out, here is me, just me, really me, and the secret me. And the desire to find out that here is someone or something that could not be me, not in a million years. That's part of the stark charm. For me at least, every story begins with a character. Now what I'm saying in the next 5 or 7 minutes is not representing the wide public of writers and novelists. I'm not here as a spokesman of the Writers' Union. I speak for myself, and even this only happens to me on a good day. For me, a story always begins with characters. Remember the woman in the window, well-dressed, perfectly dressed woman in the window at 4 o'clock in the morning in the lit window. That's how stories begin, characters. To be more precise, voices even before appearances. Where exactly they come from, I don't know. I'm sure if I went to see a psychoanalyst, which I never did, he or she would dig so deep that they will find a remote root in my own personal experience. Probably right, but it doesn't matter. I do remember occasionally one of my characters in an old novel. He has the eccentric habit of scratching his left ear with his right hand. I remember where I've seen this gesture. I even remember the person who used to scratch his ear this way, and I borrowed it from this real-life model and gave it to a totally different character. Here's an example where I remember. 99% I don't even know where things come from. I don't use real-life models. People think I do, but I don't. I used to have a next-door neighbor when I lived in a kibbutz, and I had a little workroom which the kibbutz allocated to me. And the neighbor, Meir, he used to tell me that each time he is about to cross my field of visibility, walk in front of the window of my study, he stops for a moment and combs his hair so that if he gets into one of my stories, he will get into the story with his hair neatly combed. This is not how it works. They come from wherever they come. And I walk around for a very long time pregnant with those characters. I'm reluctant to use the word pregnant because I've never experienced pregnancy, unfortunately. I wish I would. But I imagine pregnant with characters. I don't have a plot. I don't know what will happen. Only later on, location, place, time of the year, or time in history appears. When those characters start doing things to one another, what they are doing to one another inside my head, or my guts, or my stomach, I don't know. When those strangers are less strangers, and they start to do things to each other, what they do to each other is the plot. And that's when I sit and write. And by the time I write the first paragraph, the first sentence in a book, I know a hell of a lot more about those 3 or 4 or 5 characters. A hell of a lot more than I'm actually going to use in the novel. I know their backgrounds. I know their family trees. I know their childhood. I know their taste in different things, their preferences. Only a fraction of this I will actually use in the book. But I know them. I spy and I know them. And I write. And I would not like you to imagine that I can tell them what to do. I can and I cannot. I guess the first time they resist me is a wonderful moment, because the first time one of my characters resists me, I know this character is alive and I know the story is alive. Maybe, I will never know, I wish I would know, this is equivalent to the moment when a pregnant woman is kicked from the inside by her baby. It's alive. It has a life of its own. It has a will of its own. It, not me, decides whether to kick or to kick hard or not to kick. So yes, I develop sometimes conflicts with my characters. I wrote many years ago a novel called My Michael, many years ago, 50 years ago or so. It's all written in the first person from a woman's point of view. I have to say, in my defense, I was only 24 years old when I wrote it, and I thought I knew everything about women. Today I do not even get where did I have the chutzpah to write a whole novel, the nerve to write a whole novel from a woman's point of view in the first person. But at that time I knew, I thought I knew. And she and I fought all the time. I will sit down and write, and suddenly I will discover that she's doing something. And I say, no, I'm sorry, this is not in character for you. You cannot do that, or you cannot say that. And she will say, who are you to tell me what is in character for me and what isn't? And I will say, I'm sorry, you are in my novel, I'm not in your novel. I'm the boss here, I take the decisions. And she says, all right, do as you wish, but I go away. Let's see what will you do without me. And she will go away for a day, for a week, and then she will come back and we will fight again and disagree. And very often a compromise in the end. A compromise. And a bunch of characters. Every one of them wants himself or herself to be heard and to be persuasive and to be attractive and to draw the attention of the reader and to take over the story. And I, almost like an old-fashioned head of an Italian family in a Fellini movie, I had to bang the table and say, quiet everybody, now you talk and the others shut up, please. That's the way it works. And that's not the way it works. Because the way it really works is not just conducting an unruly orchestra of strong-minded individuals who will or will not obey me, like this woman Hannah in My Michael. I would say, all right, you want this, leave me alone, go to another writer, go to a female writer, I cannot write this for you, I'm a man, I cannot write this for you. Very often, the real, actual struggle is the struggle about finding the accurate noun or the accurate verb or adjective or adverb. I know people who watch writers at work in television series or in the movies. You see the writer struck by the muse, his or her hair are electrified with the muse, and he is stormily writing or typing for about 10 seconds and then cut, and the camera moves to the glamorous reception at the publishing house with the beautiful, beautiful ladies with the generous dresses and the flashes of the cameras. Well, I've got news for you. No book can be written in 10 seconds or 10 minutes or 10 hours or 10 days or 10 weeks. Not even in 10 months normally. And the hard labor is the labor of maybe an old-fashioned watchmaker or an old-fashioned jeweler who has a pair of tweezers and who picks up a stone and examines this stone against the light for a long time with one eye closed, and then very carefully puts it somewhere in the sentence. Not being happy with it, he or she, they will use the tweezers to take this word out and take another one, examine it against the light, put it in again. Not happy with it, taking it out, try a third word. Then go back to the first one, but put it in a different one in the sentence, a different place in the sentence. Then, not being happy with any of them, decided not to use any adjective at all in this sentence. Then, not being happy with the way the sentence is structured, break it into two shorter sentences. Then, not being happy with any of it, scratching the whole sentence out or destroying the whole page. Very frustrating. Writing a novel of, shall we say, 70,000 words, which is the length of my latest published novel. 70,000 words. I think, modestly, it involves more or less 500,000 decisions. Not only the big decisions, what will be the names of the characters, who will live and who will die, who will take whom to bed and when, who will prosper and who will suffer. These are the thick ones. The fine decisions are the choices between blue and pale blue. I make those decisions in order to have my reader ignore completely the fact that writing a novel is a craft, much more than it is an art. Yes, of course, there is an art. Yes, of course, there is inspiration of sorts. But first and foremost, like almost any other human labor, anything at all, be it cooking a meal or developing a new program for the computer, or discovering a new continent, or making love. First and foremost, it is a delicate craft, consists of endless number of minute choices. And if I told you earlier that I work 3 or 4 hours every morning writing, I should perhaps spoil this idyllic description by telling you that almost every day I come back to my study in the afternoon to destroy that which I've written in the morning. Almost every day. You know, when I was there's a side story, but this will be my last digression. When I was a kibbutz member, it was very, very difficult for me to persuade the kibbutz to allow me some time off for writing. I wrote some short stories in my free time, and I was lucky, and a couple of them were published in estimated literary magazines, so I gathered the nerve to go to the kibbutz committee, to the mazkirut, and say to those people, may I humbly apply for 1 day of work every week for my writing? Look at my published short stories. There was a big and serious debate in the kibbutz mazkirut secretariat, and those people, they were great debaters. They lived debating, and they died debating, and they debated in their dreams. I ended up 3 free days every week for my writing. And I would sit a whole morning, starting at 5 or before. And I'd work until lunch. And I would write 6 sentences and erase 4 of them. And sometimes I would write 6 and erase 9, some of yesterday's sentences. And then it was midday, and I had to go to the communal dining hall for lunch. And I'll sit and I'll feel the weight of enormous guilt on my shoulders, like a terrible fraud. On my left sits a man who milked 22 cows this morning. On my right sits a man who plowed 11 acres this morning. And I wrote 6 sentences and erased 4. What right have I to eat lunch with those people? What right have I to get any food at all? Guilt, you know, it's no Jewish business. Aviad will tell you that guilt was probably initially invented by Jews in this country some 3,000 years ago. Then it was with huge success marketed all over the globe by the Christians. But it is a local invention. And I have to tell you that as a Jew, I feel terribly guilty about the fact that guilt was invented by Jews. It makes me feel terribly. But then if a whole day goes by without me feeling guilty for the whole day, then in the evening I feel terribly guilty for not feeling guilty for a whole day. Close brackets. So I would sit there and be ashamed of myself. But then I developed a mantra which helped me and helps me still now. I said to myself, I'm a shopkeeper. It is my business to open the business on time and sit and wait for customers. I have customers, it's a good day. No customers, I'm still doing my job by just sitting there and waiting, but I don't cheat. I don't do other things. I don't play games with myself. I don't read the paper. I sit and wait. I'm a shopkeeper. You know, to some extent it helps me even today on very unproductive days. Time to start concluding this. If you pressed a gun to my head and said, you have one word to answer the question, what your novels and stories are about, and I've written more than 30 of those, what your stories and novels are about, I'd say families. If you give me 2 words, I'd say unhappy families. If you give me 3 words, you'll have to read my works. Why unhappy families? Tolstoy has the answer in the classical opening sentence of Anna Karenina, which I've mentioned earlier. All happy families resemble each other. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. It's not perfectly true. I sometimes disagree with Tolstoy, but let's not go into it right now unless you specifically ask me about it. However, if there is a bridge across the river, and the bridge was well designed, and the architecture was good, and it was well built, and it operates well, carrying the traffic from one side of the river to the other all the time, there's very little you can tell as a story about this bridge. Bravo to the laborers, bravo to the architect, bravo to the contractor, bravo to the mayor of the city and to the people who decided. Bravo to the drivers, if you wish, and to the pedestrians. But when the bridge breaks or collapses, that's where the story really begins. What went wrong? That's why unhappy families. Why families in the first place? I find the family the single most mysterious institution in the whole universe. The most comical, and the most tragic, and the most paradoxical, and the most absurd, and the most tensed, and the most unlikely institution, because most of us are not monogamous by nature. And indeed, for thousands of years, we have been hearing all sorts of prophecies of doom about the impending death of the family. We have been hearing some alternative ideas to family. Jesus had some suggestion, Plato had another, and somehow this strange, unlikely institution is limping its way from one generation to another for thousands of years, making funny noises, producing strange and unpleasant smells, sometimes breaking very often, taking strange shapes, very strange family constructions in contemporary world, but also in the old world. Very strange juxtaposition. Families of 4 parents and 3 parents, or 1 parent, or no parent, or whatever. All male parents, all female parents, but families. How can that be? That this strange, unlikely institution is still functioning in postmodern Greenwich Village and in the Ayatollah's Iran, in North Korea and in Latin America, in Bnei Brak and in Schenken Street in Tel Aviv. I don't have the answer. If I had the answer, maybe I'd write a guide to the happy family life and call it a day. I tell stories. I look, I watch, I study, I spy. If they gave me the choice between two options, one, to join the first manned space mission to the planet Mars, and option two, spend 24 hours as a fly on the wall in the house, in the apartment of any family at all, I don't care which one. I would rather prefer to be the fly than the astronaut. First, it's much less dangerous. But above all, it's much more exciting to me. Because I want to know when and where and how all our secrets are the same, and when and why they are not. And when you think they are and they aren't. And when you think they aren't, but deep down below they are. This is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is what I write about. This is what I tell about. Now, if you have questions, protestations, allegations, complaints, cries of anger, please go ahead.